Mercedes isn't the only team that needs to change its concept to take the fight to Red Bull. For the first time, Ferrari has admitted that it might also be in trouble on that score. 3 races in, a Ferrari driver has yet to stand on the podium, and during the recent Australian Grand Prix weekend, it had only the 4th fastest car. Up until then, talk had been about improving the consistency of the car through setup changes and ongoing upgrades. But early in the weekend, Carlos Sainz admitted the problem might lie with the concept and the fact Red Bull's simply offers greater performance potential. So what exactly does Sainz mean? Why is Ferrari struggling? And what does it mean for the rest of the 2023 season? This time last year, Ferrari had won 2 out of 3 Grand Prix and Charles Leclerc led the Drivers' Championship by 34 points. This year, Leclerc is down in 10th place, with Sainz 5th and nowhere near points leader Max Verstappen. Ferrari has scored only 26 points in total. That makes this its worst start of the V6 turbo hybrid era. Ferrari hasn't even finished on the podium yet, with Sainz's 4th place in Bahrain its best. Its struggles are down to a combination of factors. Leclerc had reliability problems in Bahrain related to the power unit control electronics, leading to component changes that triggered a 10-place grid penalty for Saudi Arabia. There have also been tyre degradation troubles over race stints, as well as failures to execute properly, such as qualifying in Australia. There, crisscrossing Q3 run strategies led to Sainz being in Leclerc's way on the final runs, leading to a sarcastic radio message from Leclerc about the tow he was given in the twists of turn 3 and 4 at Albert Park. There have been driver blunders too. Leclerc spun into the gravel on the first lap of the Australian Grand Prix after contact with Lance Stroll, and Sainz hit Fernando Alonso into a spin at the final standing restart in Australia and earned a 5-second penalty that cost him 4th place. It's been a trying start to new team principal Fred Vasseur's leadership. Despite suffering from back pain in Australia and accepting that things had not gone as planned for Ferrari, he accentuated the positive of the tyre management gains since Saudi Arabia, describing Ferrari's race pace as a real step forward compared to Jeddah. It's true that Sainz's pace was encouraging, although it's difficult to draw definitive conclusions from it. After his pit stop immediately prior to the red flag relegated him to 10th at the restart, he quickly charged up to 4th, and in the brief spell he was in clear air while catching Fernando Alonso, he set a similar pace to leader Verstappen. But Verstappen was in a phase of the race where he could manage his pace, and while Sainz spent a big chunk of that stint contained by Alonso's speed, he did start to drop away a little in the 10 laps before the second red flag. The pace drop-off wasn't anything like as big as in Bahrain or Jeddah, but this was at a track that was less demanding of the rear tyres, so Ferrari's weakness in that area was less exposed. Whenever asked about car upgrades, Vasseur has stressed the need for the team to maximise the package it's got. There will be new parts for the next race in Azerbaijan at the end of April that will improve performance, but Ferrari hasn't helped itself by not getting the most out of its car up to this point. While that's played a part in its struggles, Ferrari is still clearly lagging behind Red Bull. On average, it's 0.4% down on Red Bull, which equates to about 3.5 tenths around a 90-second circuit. Even factoring in the qualifying underachievement in Australia, that's not good enough. As it's clear that the Ferrari SF23 isn't quick enough, even if the team and drivers get the most out of it, what's the problem? Let's look back to last year. When the 2022 Ferrari was launched, it caught the eye with its distinctive sidepod design. This featured a wide, scalloped upper surface that eschewed the aggressive downwash of the Red Bull concept, instead channeling more airflow to energise the rear beam wing. But the car was quick, more often than not faster than the Red Bull over a lap. Ferrari only won 4 races, but thanks to power unit problems, strategic blunders and driver errors, it threw away many more. The potential of the car didn't seem to be Ferrari's problem. Ferrari carried this concept into 2023 with the expectation this would yield strong performance this year. Rumours circulating in the off-season suggested Ferrari had made big gains that, harnessed to hope for improvements in power unit reliability that would allow it to unleash more engine performance rather than playing it safe, would make it a title contender. Given straight-line speed was a weakness in 2022, Ferrari attempted to improve this at the expense of a little downforce. During pre-season testing, the drivers suggested this had been achieved as hoped. But once the speed of the Red Bull RB19 became clear, Ferrari had to think again. As Sainz put it, Ferrari is puzzled given the belief the team had nailed its design concept last year. Sainz went on to say that this shows the capacity of development of the Red Bull direction is a lot higher than the capacity of development of our project. Last year's performance gave Ferrari the confidence to keep pushing with this concept, but Sainz feels that was a mistake given Red Bull has made a bigger step forward than Ferrari thought possible. Ferrari is on the back foot. Sainz ran through the areas where Red Bull is superior, and it was a damning list containing qualifying pace, race pace, straight line speed, medium and low speed corners, tyre management, being better over curbs and bumps. It just shows that we clearly need to change something, he said. Both drivers have indicated the car is peaky, suggesting that as well as lacking performance, it's also tricky to drive. The Ferrari has struggled with understeer at times, suggesting that part of the concept disadvantage is the struggle to maximise front-end grip. This can be not only down to overall downforce levels, but also to the mechanical platform and how well the characteristics like the aerodynamic centre of pressure are manipulated dynamically. Red Bull's concept advantage is not only in terms of the visible shape of its side pods and top body aero as a whole, but how it manages the airflow to and in the powerful underfloor as well. And this is all connected to its suspension design, something Adrian Newey focused on with last year's car. A car concept is, after all, the sum of many things. It's also worth noting that Ferrari was at its best before the FIA intervened in 2022 to limit the acceptable vertical oscillations. The Ferrari porpoised significantly at times last year, and even though that didn't seem to cost it performance, limitations on that will have hurt it. And this year, the floor edges have been raised 15mm, which might also have worked against its concept. Sainz's message is worrying for Ferrari fans. Being slower than Red Bull in a fight with Mercedes and Aston Martin is bad enough. But if its car concept isn't right and really does have a lower performance ceiling than the one pursued by Red Bull and much of the rest of the field, then no matter how well it develops, it could always be a step behind. So what does Ferrari do now? Realistically, its chances of fighting for the championship in 2023 are all but extinguished. And with limitations such as the cost cap and the fact Red Bull already has a big advantage, it won't be the work of a moment to fix things. There were tweaks in Saudi Arabia, where Ferrari introduced a new front wing end plate and a tweaked floor edge featuring a raised trailing edge. Ferrari also had a new beam wing there, but this was a circuit-specific, lower downforce version. Although Vasseur had previously indicated there would be further new parts in Australia, nothing seemed to change. Even with more changes planned for Baku, it's going to take more than that to transform Ferrari's fortunes. The question now is how drastic is Ferrari able to be, and can it follow Mercedes in making major concept changes during the course of the year? Mercedes has one advantage in that area in that it had a clear idea that it was at a disadvantage before this season got underway. That allowed it to have a change of concept ready to go, with the first real manifestations of that due for the Imola race, where a modified sidepod design that requires some under-the-bodywork changes is due to appear. And that's just the first step, with the changes needed for a full-on concept change requiring far more time. Realistically, to make such changes properly and optimise your design, it'll be about the 2024 car. Any loss of confidence for Ferrari appears to have come later than it did for Mercedes. And even if it does make major changes, there will be architectural and financial limitations that mean it won't be able to transform the car completely this year. That means some tough decisions will have to be made at Maranello. Sainz has indicated that Ferrari knows its weaknesses, understands why the car is peaky, and why its rivals don't have the same characteristics. As he put it, Ferrari can develop in the right direction. But with Red Bull already well ahead, Ferrari faces an uphill battle to get on terms. Now, it's a question of whether it can either raise the performance ceiling of its current concept, or, more likely, make some big changes to allow it to take the fight to Red Bull in 2024.